The phone rang at exactly 3:17 p.m. On a Tuesday. Frank Morrison was sitting in his leather chair, staring at his grandson's funeral program from 3 days ago, when that call changed everything. He picked up the receiver with the same steady hand that once held a rifle in 3 different wars. "Hello? Sir, your grandson didn't die in an accident." 7 words. That's all it took to shatter everything Frank thought he knew about Tommy's death. Welcome to Quiet Tales Studio. Before we continue this story that will shake you to your core, tell us in the comments, what city are you watching from today? And if stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button. Frank Morrison wasn't just any grandfather. At 72, he still carried himself like the decorated Marine he'd been for 30 years. Silver hair, steel blue eyes, and a face carved by decades of discipline. His wife Margaret had died last year. Tommy was all he had left. 3 days ago, they told him his 22-year-old grandson lost control of his car on a rainy night. Tragic accident. These things happen. But Marines don't believe in coincidences. "Who is this?" Frank asked, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Someone who knows the truth. Miller's Diner, Highway 9, 1 hour. Come alone." The line went dead. Frank stared at the phone, then at the framed photo on his mantle. Tommy in his college graduation gown, that bright smile that had gotten him through his darkest days after Margaret's death, unless someone had stolen it from him. Frank walked to his bedroom closet and opened a wooden box he hadn't touched in months. Inside, his Purple Heart from Vietnam, Bronze Star from the Gulf War, and a service pistol he'd hoped never to need again. 30 years in the Marines. 3 wars, countless missions. He'd survived more battles than most men see in a lifetime. But nothing had prepared him for burying his grandson. Tommy had been his pride and joy. After Frank's son Michael died 5 years ago in that sudden heart attack, Tommy had become the son Frank never thought he'd have again. Smart, ambitious, studying engineering at Virginia Tech. Frank slipped the gun into his jacket pocket and headed for the door. Miller's Diner was a 20-minute drive through the small Virginia town Frank had called home for the past decade. The kind of place where nothing bad was supposed to happen, where grandsons weren't supposed to die at 22. The man waiting for him looked like trouble, 40-something, nervous eyes, wearing a rumpled suit. "Mr. Morrison?" "Detective Jim Hayes, Internal Affairs." Frank slid into the booth across from him. "You investigated Tommy's crash?" "Officially, yes. Case closed." Hayes pulled out a manila envelope. "Unofficially, these photos tell a different story." Frank opened the envelope. Close-up shots of car parts, brake lines, steering components. But these weren't damaged from an accident. They were cut. "Someone murdered my grandson," Frank said quietly. Hayes nodded. "Tommy worked at the city planning office this summer. Part-time job to pay for college. But he started noticing patterns. $1 million contracts going to companies that didn't exist. Permits approved overnight. All signed by the same 3 people. Frank's jaw tightened. "Who?" "Mayor Caldwell, City Council President Davis, Police Chief Barrett. 20 years of corruption, Mr. Morrison. 60 million in taxpayer money stolen. Your grandson found the proof." Hayes leaned forward. "I've been building this case for 3 years. Every time I got close, evidence disappeared. Witnesses changed stories, until Tommy gave us everything we needed." "What about the files he copied?" "They got to his apartment before we did. cleaned out his computer, took everything. Hayes paused. Everything except what he hid at your house. Frank went cold. What? 3 days before he died, Tommy visited you, right? He left something in your guest room, hidden it somewhere safe. That night, Frank tore apart his guest room with methodical precision. Behind the loose baseboard Tommy had always complained about, Frank found it. A small USB drive wrapped in plastic along with a handwritten note. Grandpa, if you're reading this, something happened to me. These people destroyed Dad's construction company 5 years ago. They've been stealing from this town for 20 years. Don't let them win. Take this to the FBI. Make them pay for what they did to our family. I love you. Tommy. Frank's hands shook as he read the note. Tommy's father, Frank's son Michael, had died of a heart attack when his construction company went bankrupt. Frank had always blamed stress. Now he knew the truth. His family had been destroyed twice by the same people. Frank plugged the drive into his computer. Files filled the screen. Bank records showing millions transferred to offshore accounts. Audio recordings of Mayor Caldwell discussing eliminating problems. Video footage of Police Chief Barrett accepting briefcases full of cash. His grandson had done it. Tommy had gotten them all. Frank picked up his phone and dialed Hayes. I found it, he said simply. Good. Meet me at the FBI field office tomorrow morning. No. Frank's voice was steel. They killed my son's dream and my grandson's life. This ends tonight. Frank spent the next hour studying every file on Tommy's drive. His grandson had been thorough. Bank transfers, fake invoices, recorded conversations, photographs of secret meetings. The evidence was overwhelming. Mayor Caldwell had been the ringleader. Police Chief Barrett provided protection. City Council President Davis rubber-stamped everything. For 20 years, they'd stolen from schools, hospitals, emergency services. Money meant to help people had bought them luxury cars and vacation homes. Frank called Detective Hayes back. I'm going to Caldwell's office tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. sharp. Mr. Morrison, that's not safe. Let the FBI handle. The FBI will get their evidence. But first, I'm going to look that bastard in the eye and tell him exactly who he killed. Frank hung up and opened his closet. Tomorrow, he would wear his dress blue Marine uniform. Every medal, every ribbon, 30 years of service on full display. It was time to finish what Tommy started. The next morning at exactly 8 a.m., Frank Morrison walked into Mayor Caldwell's office wearing his full military dress uniform. The mayor's secretary tried to stop him, but Frank walked past her with the authority of a man who had commanded troops in combat. Caldwell looked up from his desk, confused. Sir, you can't just... I'm Frank Morrison, Tommy Morrison's grandfather. The color drained from Caldwell's face. I don't know what you're talking about. Frank placed the USB drive on the desk between them. My grandson recorded everything. Your voice discussing murder, your bank accounts, your meetings with Barrett and Davis, 20 years of theft, documented with engineering precision. Caldwell's hand moved toward his desk drawer, but Frank was faster. 30 years of training don't fade, even at 72. I wouldn't, Frank said calmly, pinning the mayor's wrist to the desk. You're making a mistake, old man. You have no idea who you're dealing with. The only mistake, Frank replied, was thinking you could murder a Marine's grandson and get away with it. Outside, sirens were approaching. Detective Hayes had brought backup, FBI agents, state police, news crews. My grandson was going to be an engineer, Frank continued. He wanted to build bridges, help communities. Instead, he died because he tried to stop thieves like you from stealing from the people he wanted to serve. The office door burst open. FBI agents flooded in, followed by cameras. "Mayor Richard Caldwell," the lead agent announced, "you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and first-degree murder." As they cuffed Caldwell, Frank leaned close and whispered, "This is for Tommy, and for every family you destroyed with your greed." 6 months later, Frank Morrison stood in the courthouse where Mayor Caldwell was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Police Chief Barrett got 25 years. City Council President Davis testified against the others and still received 15 years. $68 million was recovered and returned to the city. The elementary school got its new roof. The fire department got modern equipment. The library stayed open. They named the new community center the Thomas Michael Morrison Engineering Center, after both Frank's son and grandson. Frank walked out of that courthouse into the Virginia sunshine, finally able to visit Tommy's grave without carrying the weight of unanswered questions. He placed fresh flowers on the headstone and stood at attention, rendering a final salute to the young man who had shown more courage than soldiers twice his age. Justice doesn't bring back the dead, but sometimes it ensures their sacrifice meant something. Tommy Morrison died trying to do the right thing. His grandfather made sure his death wasn't in vain, because Marines don't leave missions unfinished. And some fights are worth finishing, no matter how old you are. 3 years later, Frank Morrison still lives in the same house where Tommy hid the evidence that brought down a corrupt government. He volunteers at the community center that bears his family's name, teaching young people about honor and integrity. The town is different now. Clean, honest. The kind of place where young people like Tommy can dream of building a better future without fear of corruption destroying their hopes. Detective Hayes was promoted to chief of police. He keeps Tommy's photo on his desk as a reminder that sometimes the most important cases come from unexpected sources. Frank keeps Tommy's final note framed on his mantle next to the photo of his grandson in his graduation gown. Every morning he reads those words, "Marines don't quit, and Morrison men finish what they start." Some stories end with explosions and car chases. This one ends with something more powerful: the quiet victory of truth over lies, justice over corruption, and a grandfather's love proving stronger than death itself. Sometimes, one phone call really can change everything. This story was brought to you by Quiet Tales Studio. Have you ever known someone who never gave up fighting for what was right? Someone who proved that age is just a number when justice is on the line? Tell us their story in the comments below and let us know what city you're watching from. If this story moved you, subscribe to Quiet Tales Studio for more stories of quiet heroes who changed everything with their courage. We'll see you in the next one. And remember, sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one everyone underestimated.